It has become commonplace when meeting people who have served or are serving in the Defence Forces to say to them, "Thank you for your service." And it is appropriate that we do so. These men and women serve our nation both in keeping us and others safe, often to their own cost and often to the cost of their own families. Given that for 100 years Legacy has served those families, it seems appropriate to me that we say to Legacy and to legatees, "Thank you for your service." But I think we can say more. I think we can say, in God's name, thank you for your service. And very briefly, I want to think through that idea. You see, the act of caring for widows and their children is a profoundly radical biblical idea. In the Old Testament, in the law that God gives his people, they are told that they should care for the widow. When harvesting, they were to leave some so that the widows could go and collect it. When a religious offering was made, part of it was to be given to widows. The community was to ensure the widow, often the most exposed relationally and financially in the community, they were to ensure that the widows got justice. The book of Ruth in the Old Testament is a beautiful and practical example of how this was played out amongst God's people as a group of widows are cared for in the community at Bethlehem. In the New Testament, James picks up this idea saying, "Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress." Not turning up to church, not singing hymns, but caring for widows and orphans. That is what true religion is, according to the Bible. Given this, it's no surprise that Jesus cares for a widow. In the early church, it was known for its cares and widows, and the first piece of administration we have, the first bit of rostering so beloved in churches since, is to make sure that widows were being appropriately cared for by the deacons or the servers in the church. Given this focus on caring for the widow and the orphan, I'm so grateful for the service that Legacy has given over the past 100 years as it looks after the missus and the kids. You are caring on behalf of the nation that has been and the families that have been impacted by their service. And in so doing, you are also expressing God's care and concern for them. The God who is called in the book of Psalms the Father of orphans and the protector of widows. For fulfilling that call on God to us and our society, to Legacy, I say in God's name, thank you for your service. But there is more. It is the particular way in which legatees serve that is so particularly special. Now, I'm about to do some name dropping, so stick with me here for a moment. I was reading a book of speeches by William Cox, former Governor of Tasmania. Now, Your Excellency, once your book comes out, I'll read it, I promise. But in this book, there is a chapter on Sir John Gellibrand, the founder of the Remembrance Club, which leads us to Legacy. And in that chapter about John Gellibrand, written by William Cox, he quotes Sir Isaac Isaacs, who is the first Australian-born and first Jewish Governor-General of Australia. You with me here? So it's in William Cox's book about John Gellibrand, but I'm quoting Isaac Isaacs, okay? So, got it? He wrote, "The legacy to which every member of a legacy club succeeds, the moment he enters into membership as a legatee, is of no material benefit to him in any way, except in the highest and most patriotic, exalted and spiritual sense. It cannot be considered a benefit to him, but a burden. A legacy which comes to him and that he so willingly accepts, so far from being a material gain or advantage, is, in worldly and a pecuniary sense, a liability and a lifelong responsibility. Happily, there were many good and noble things which came out of the war, and the Legacy Club is one of the finest of them." Legatees give not for any benefit that they receive, but simply for the good of those that they serve. But I'm going to drop an even bigger name now. Jesus, also Jewish and the first and only Son of God. He said, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbours, in case they may invite you in return and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame and the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, and you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. The type of service that Legacy provides is the kind of service that Jesus calls his followers to do. It serves as a reminder to those of us who need to be reminded that we do not serve for any reward, but our call is to serve in a self-sacrificial way. For this, along with those many families who have received and been blessed by Legacy's care, a care that they cannot possibly repay, I say in God's name, thank you for your service. Finally, this leads to the direct example of Jesus, who, even as he was dying, made sure that his mother was looked after, entrusting her to the ongoing care of his friend John, and that is captured in the rood screen in front of you. If you've ever wondered why there's John and Mary always on a rood screen, it's Jesus caring or creating a new community at the foot of the cross. Mary is entrusted to John, John is entrusted to Mary, and they then look after each other from that time forward. Here is the kid looking after the missus. But more than that, in this act of crucifixion, it's not just a random act of brutality, but God was so loving the world that he gave his only Son so that all who believe in him will have eternal life. Jesus gave his life to us who can never repay him so that we can have life and life to the full. When we think of God's name, we should be thinking of Jesus and see the God that we see there is one who serves us, all of us who are in need. We follow a servant king. Jesus is showing this serving nature of God, not only that he gives life to those who have hope, but he created a radical new community that cared for the poor, the needy, and the disadvantaged. This was something the world had never seen before. It is this caring community which is Jesus' legacy. Legacy exists in the light of this legacy of service, and I'm grateful to Legacy for this reminder and pray that the church, as well as the wider community, will recommit ourselves to live in the light of this legacy. That we will look after those who have served in our Defence Forces, who are so often impacted for life, and for those members of their families. May this not simply be a legacy, but an ongoing act of justice and of love. For all this, to Legacy and the legatees, I say in God's name, thank you for your service.